over Layla Seder in a half an hour or less. Well, I have a 3-volume book just on the Seder, 1,500 pages on everything about the Seder, right? And he asked me to do it in 30 minutes or less. But as the many Talmidim over the years has coming to my shiurim, I try to make principles and summarize, and I have shared with you 3 pages where the outline page, the double page we're going to go through today, God willing, in our next 30 minutes. And the other 2 pages are take home and to make use of and look at it yourself. And I'll point out a little bit towards it. Talk about the Seder night. If you open up your Haggadah, and I took this actually from the Art Scroll Haggadah, there are 15 highlights, or 15 points which are always mentioned. On the left side of your page, you see there Kadesh, Urchatz, Kaparats, all the way to 15 Nirtza. The reason why it is a listing of 15, because the Seder night has so many mitzvahs that you got to be ordering it. You have to make Seder. You have to put them in order. And if you're asking how many mitzvahs are at the Seder night, how many mitzvahs do we fulfill the Seder night? Well, famously, they always say, well, 2 Torah mitzvahs and 3 rabbinic mitzvahs. And if you take the sheet which has the mitzvahs of the Seder night, right, you'll see that the 2 Torah mitzvahs are Sipur Yitzit Mitzrayim, the telling of the going out of Egypt, Magit, and Achilas Matzah, 2 Torah mitzvahs. And if what are the rabbinic mitzvahs? There are 3 rabbinic mitzvahs always mentioned: drinking of 4 cups of wine, eating a maror, and saying Hallel. But the Gra famously said that if you look carefully, there are 64 mitzvahs at the Seder. How many? 64, right? So I try to enumerate them more than the 5, which are the highlights. And that's what you can look at this page. But just another one, just easy, right? You're going to be benching on Seder night. Torah mitzvah, rabbinic mitzvah. Torah mitzvah, that's another Torah mitzvah besides, but it's not a special one for the Seder. There are 5 special ones for the Seder. So going through now and looking at the outline sheet, outline sheet, you can break up the Seder into 2 or 3 parts. The parts before the meal and the parts after the meal. The part before the meal is 2 cups of wine, which includes the telling of the going out of Egypt. Second half is the eating of the matzah, eating of the maror, having the meal. And you can say the third part is the after Seder, is talk about Hallel and the ending of the Seder. So if you want to know what are the 3 parts of the Seder, first part is 2 cups of wine and the telling of the going out of Egypt, the Magit. The second middle part is the eating part. And the third part is the Hallel, the songs and the praise part. Fine. So that's the first thing to know. So if you look at your sheet, the first part is from number 1 through 5. That's the first 5 points is the first part of the Seder. Then the eating part is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, which is the eating part and the benching following it. And then the third part of the Seder is the Hallel and the Nirtza. So it's already good to know there are 3 parts to the Seder: beginning part, the eating part, the middle part, and the ending part. As I mentioned, we have 2 Torah mitzvahs and 3 rabbinic mitzvahs. 2 Torah mitzvahs are the telling of the going out of Egypt. That's number 5. The second Torah mitzvah is the eating of the matzah. That is number 7 and 8, referring to number 7 and 8. And the 3 rabbinic mitzvahs are drink of the 4 cups of wine, which are spread out throughout the Seder. First cup is Kiddush is said over the first cup. Second cup is the telling of the going out of Egypt. The story part is said over a second cup. The third cup is benching. You say benching over a third cup. And then Hallel was the 4th cup. Then there's a second rabbinic mitzvah of eating of maror, eating of the bitter herbs. And the third rabbinic mitzvah is the saying of Hallel. So those are the 5. And if you look at the mitzvah sheet, those are the 5 enumerated on top of the mitzvah sheet. But as I said, we do a lot more. What I'd like to go through now is to ground you and going through a little bit of the halachas of the Seder and making sure that we are aware of the most important things to be aware of and not to forget. So now on the outline sheet, we're now going to go from the left side to the right side, and let's go through it, the halachas of the Seder. So first halach of the Seder is to start it at nightfall. I know that especially in outside of Israel, where nightfall maybe late, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, and people like to start early. The Seder is a whole long night. Let's start at 6 o'clock. And says, no, specifically, the Seder can only be done at nightfall, at night. Even though on a regular Shabbos, you can make Kiddush early. You can make an early Shabbos. So why can't we make Kiddush early on Seder night? No, you cannot. Since the Seder night is specifically has to happen on the 15th of Nisan, and the telling of the going out of Egypt must be at a time where you have matzah in front of you, and Kiddush is said beforehand in the 4 cups. It must be done at nightfall only. So therefore, if you're a chutzlaretz and they like to start the Seder early, so try to make it later, meaning at nightfall, right? Obviously, here in Israel, we daven Mariv and then go quickly home and start the Seder. But if you're in a place where there is no tefillas, there's no Mariv, right? Daven Mariv you can daven early, but the Seder night, Kiddush can only be done at nightfall. That's the first halacha. Begin at nightfall and try, and this is the second halacha. The second part was dealing with time. Try to eat the afikomen by midnight. B'chatzot, afikomen is number 12 on our listing of 15. Try to schedule that you finish or that you get to that point by midnight. And I say only try. It's not a halacha that you must. You should try. And most of the times you get to it, but there are many homes which don't make it, but it's a good thing to know. So first halacha is of Kiddush. We said that Kiddush is the first of 4 cups, which is a rabbinic mitzvah. What are halachas of Kiddush? Number 1, be aware, you're fulfilling besides Kiddush a mitzvah of the 4 cups of the Seder. Meaning, Kiddush is saying the words of sanctification on the holiday, which is like we do every holiday or every Shabbos. But it's the first of 4 cups of wine, the 4 expressions of redemption, of Geula, which Chazal identified in the Chumash, and therefore they established that the person must drink 4 cups of wine. Now, you can't do these 4 cups of wine one after the other. They specifically have to be set out throughout the Seder. As we mentioned, the first cup of wine is Kiddush, second cup of wine, the Magid, the story is set over it, the third cup of wine, benching is set over it, and the 4th cup, Hallel, is set over it. So it has to be spread out through the evening. So what are the halachas of Kiddush, or the first of the 4th cup? Number 1, and this is the minimum amount, the cup must hold a revi'is of liquid. Now, how much is a revi'is of liquid? The opinions range between 89 and 150 milliliters, or between 3 and 4.5 fluid ounces. Which means if you have a tiny cup, even though you may fill it up quickly, you drink a revi'is, not good enough. We're talking about the cup must hold that amount. Now, what do you have to drink? How much you have to drink? Let's say you have a cup which is exactly a revi'is. Halach is you have to drink most of the revi'is. Most of it. You don't have to drink a full revi'is each of the 4 times. Most of it. Rove revi'is is enough to be yotzi, to have considered I have fulfilled them. And by the way, unlike on Friday night where one person makes Kiddush and he has a cup, since this is a mitzvah of the night, everybody will have a cup of wine in front of him. Right? Everybody must have a cup of wine in front of it. With regard to who says Kiddush, there are different opinions and different customs in the house. Could be that some opinions say that, no, like on Friday night, one person says the Kiddush and he drinks and he gives it out. In this case, he will say the Kiddush and everybody drinks their cup. Or no, everybody says Kiddush along with him. Either one is fine. The most important thing is everybody has a cup of wine. Second halacha is, now this is a halacha. Two crucial halachas. The cup must hold a revi'is and you must drink most of it. However, there are additional ways to make it like a hitter mitzvah. Nicest is to fill up the cup, meaning to fill up to the brim. And second halacha, drink either most of it or all of it of that cup. Now, if you have a revi'is, so you fill it up to the top, because you must fill it up to the top, and you drink either most of it or all of it. Well, let's say you say, no, a revi'is, that's a tiny wine cup. Wine cups are large. So, they're large. They contain, 4 or 5 revi'is. Can I use a large cup for the 4 cups, right? So as long as you put a revi'is in there and you drink most of the revi'is, that's fine. And often a wine cup, you don't fill up to the top of the big wine cups. When you drink, dry wine, you don't fill up to the top. However, you won't be able to fulfill the other halachas. That is filling it up to the top, because generally a wine cup, you never fill up to the top. You keep it 1/4, 1/5, right? A little bit. And on Pesach night, you should fill up to the top. It looks beautiful. And number 2, the halacha is that the nicest thing to drink most of the cup most of the cup or finish the cup. If you have a huge cup, we're talking about 4 or 5 revies for every cup, you're going to be either under the table or it's just too much sugar if you're dealing with grape juice. So therefore, it is always preferred to have smaller wine cups, meaning the wine cups we generally have for people who know how to drink wine are huge. For the Kiddush, for the 4 cups of Leila Seder, use smaller cups, which means use a cup which has an exactly revies around that amount. Because then you can fill it up to the top and it won't be that much. You can drink most of it. You filled up mitzvah. And if you want to finish it, drink a little more. That's always a good thing. Now, even though this year Pesach falls out on a Monday night, if Pesach falls out on Friday night, and the Kiddush, therefore, is not just a rabbinic mitzvah to recite Kiddush on a Yontif, but will be a Torah mitzvah to recite Kiddush on Friday night. Zachor v'shamor. Zachor is remember Shabbos over a cup of wine, and therefore the Kiddush is a Torah mitzvah. It's a whole discussion, but it's a Torah mitzvah. Generally, people use a slightly larger cup, which means if now on Pesach you use a 3 fluid ounces or 90 milliliter cup, if it's Friday night, many people like to use a bigger cup. Either way, it's fine. It's fine. But those are the halachas of the cup and how much you have to drink. Now the halacha, keep in mind, you must drink while leaning on something. This is for men, being the mitzvah of haseva, you have to be like a free man. We spoke about the freedom in the vortlach. You have to be leaning. Now, what does it mean leaning? We're talking about you have to be leaning on something, meaning if sometimes they say haseva means reclining. Now, if I go like this, am I reclining? I'm reclining, but I'm not leaning. You got to be leaning on something, which means if you're sitting on a bench which has no backing, you can't be drinking while leaning, because there's nothing supporting you. So therefore, you have to have a chair where you can lean on. And if it's, if the back is small, move it a little bit to the back. You lean to the left, and therefore make sure you lean while drinking, which means normally you drink bend forwards or not bend backwards. Here, you're leaning while bent backwards, and you lean to your left side. Be aware, many of your shirts are going to get dripped on or going to get, oops, this fell off. Fix it up. Yeah, sorry. Get dripped on and get dirty. Be aware, this may happen. Have an extra shirt on you, because could very well be that by Pesach night your shirt is all going to be dirty because of the leaning. Have a spare shirt for the next day. Just piece of advice, not a halacha, piece of advice. So therefore, you have to drink while leaning, and this goes for all the four cups. With regards to what type to use, best is to use wine. Now, if you're using wine, be wise. Meaning, we have to drink 4 cups. If you use this old sweet wine, it may be very bad in your stomach. Better to use either half sweet or dry wine, because that's just better for you with regards to the amount of drink you gotta have to do. Or if that's too much for you with regards to the alcohol, you can use either wine, or if that is too much, use wine mixed with grape juice. Do half-half. So because the alcohol amount may be too much for you, especially if Erev Pesach, the whole day you haven't been eating so much. This is the first cup of wine. It's going to be another hour plus until you're going to be eating something. A cup of wine on an empty stomach may not be good for everybody. And therefore, you may want to mix it up. Or you can say, well, this is the first cup I use wine. The second cup I mix it with grape juice. The third cup I just use grape juice, and so on. Whatever you want is fine, but it has to be either wine or grape juice or a mixture of the two. And halach is that red wine is preferred, unless you have a white wine, which is better. Still, even if you have a white wine, which is better, some color it. They take a little bit of red wine and color it. One of the reasons is because red is remembers of the dam, of the blood which is spilled in Egypt. That's why we have red wine for the 4 cups. Okay, that's halacha of Kiddush. Remember, Kiddush is the first thing which we do in the evening. It's like every Yontif, every Friday night we make Kiddush. It's the same structure. You make Kiddush, make sure you have the cup is big enough. Everybody has a cup. You drink, and you do that while leaning. Next part, even though obviously there are many minhagim during the Seder, if you look at it on the left side, urchat, karpas, yachat, these are not part of the mitzvahs of the evening, but these are the minhagim of the evening. Because if we get to magid, these are things in preparatory for the evening. If you're asking, what is a mitzvah for the evening? Is it yachatz? Well, beautiful. Kabbalistically, it's the highlight of the evening, right? Like Rabbi Iyun said. In terms of halachically, it is of minor significance. Obviously, we do everything. We do everything meticulously. But in terms of halachas, make sure that you have these things which we outline here on the page on the right side. Everything else is beautiful, necessary, extra credit, but not the ikar, not the main part of the Seder. So then we get to Magid. Magid is the second mitzvah of the evening with regards to 8 mitzvahs, and this is a Torah mitzvah. Now, if you want to define what is Magid, because every night we speak about the Exodus of Egypt. Where? Or you remember? In the Kriya Shema. So what's the difference between the mention of going out of Egypt, which we do twice a day, and the mention of going out of Egypt on Pesach night? Well, here we have an extension. Here we do. It's a Torah mitzvah to take part of the telling of the story of the slavery going out of Egypt. But it's not just the slavery. It's also the miracles which happened there preceding the leaving and the exodus of going out of Egypt. Meaning you can't just talk about, well, we were enslaved. Okay, let's go home. No. You can't just talk about, let's talk about the 10 plagues. Let's go home. You can't just talk about, let's talk about the Red Sea, going the leaving itself. No, it's all 3 parts. In halacha, all 3 parts has to be mentioned in the story. We were slaves. God performed miracles, and we left. Make sure to have that in mind. The way that is done, and this is what it says in the Gemara, is by way of questions, story, and praise. Shaila, Sipur, and Halil, and Hoda'ah. That's what is different of the mitzvah of Magid on Pesach night with regards to the mentioning and just the mentioning of the going out of Egypt, which is done twice a day, every day. So, and now how much you do, how many questions you ask, how long the story will be, how much praise you do, that's already extra, right? If somebody says, well, listen, I'm a soldier in Gaza, they give me 20 minutes for the entire Seder, a half an hour for the entire Seder. Well, it takes us 6 hours, right? I have a half an hour for the entire Seder. Is it possible? And it says yes. Because as long as you have a minimum amount, what's the minimum amount? Speaking about the slavery, the miracles, the Exodus, doing by way of questions, story, and praise. The questions can be the Manishtana. That's good. You can ask your own questions also, right? The story can be one of the 4 stories which we find in the Magid. And the praise can be any Hallel or the entire Hallel which we have. And therefore, it's good to know what's the min, what's the breakdown. If you want to know how many question, story, and praise is, I gave you this sheet. This sheet actually you can identify 4 times this structure of questions, story, and praise within the Magid. Because people generally say, well, I have questions, that's Manistana. I have the story, that's the Haggadah. And I have Hallel, praise, that comes at the end. If you look at this sheet, you can actually identify 4 times that structure of questions, story, and praise. You can look at it yourself. So that's the mitzvah of Haggadah. Now, you find that in mitzvah of Haggadah, towards the end of the Magid, and you find that Rabban Gamliel explains the mitzvahs which are ordained for the Seder, Pesach, Matzah, and Mar, and it says that a person must be aware and must be present at that time. And therefore, I'm stressing it here that you have to be aware, read, and understand the Rabban Gamliel section, again, towards the end of the Magid, where he expresses the mitzvahs are enumerated. And because really, it's the purpose of the telling of the going out of Egypt is for the purpose of fulfilling mitzvahs. And therefore, this Rabban Gamliel story is important. It's really another story, and therefore, you must be aware. Now, if you're asking, do we have to read everything of the Magid? Does everybody has to read everything of the Magid? What if you're not there? What if you came in the middle? What if you came in the end? What if you're just sitting and listening? Well, storytelling, how many people do you need for storytelling? Well, really 2, right? One telling the story, one is listening. Is the one listening part of the storytelling? Anyway, yes, because he's part of the recounting of the telling of the going, you're speaking, I'm listening, that's fine. Which means if you sit at a Seder and there are 10 people there, or 100 people there, or 2 people there, right? But it doesn't make a difference. If one person, if the grandfather is speaking, and he's telling the stories and everything, and the son and the grandson and the great-grandson, everybody's sitting there and listening, even if they don't participate, don't say every word of the Haggadah, they're still Yotzi, because they're part of the evening where you speak about the telling of the going out of Egypt. So that's fine. You don't have to read every word. You have to read word in case you don't have not said every word. That's what I mentioned here. That's what I mean here. It's a Torah mitzvah to take part of the telling of the slavery God. You don't have to say every word yourself. It's nice to say it alongside, but in terms of halacha, that is not crucial. After the Magid, which means after point number 5, towards the end of point 9, drink the second cup. And this is another rule, and that is, I mentioned here, the second cup is drunk after the Magid, same halachas as before, but filled up before Magid, which means Kiddush, obviously, we always know that, right? You say Kiddush over a cup of wine. Well, the second cup of wine is not just drunk after the magid, but the magid is said over a cup of wine, which means you fill it up in the beginning and you drink it at the end. Same thing for the third cup, which is benching. You fill up the third cup before benching and you drink it at the end. Same thing for the fourth cup. You fill it up before Hallel. You say Hallel over a cup of wine, and then you drink it at the end. Okay? So just to note, so therefore you have Magid, which is said over a cup of wine. Obviously the matzah is on the table. The storytelling is also said over the matzah, which is going to be eaten very, very soon. Okay, then you get to the matzah. So obviously you have here on the points on the left side, you have rachza, which is the washing of hands, which is the regular washing of hands. Obviously, you wash your hands before eating bread, and this is the bread of the evening. So you have the washing, but then you get to the matzah. So what is the mitzvah of eating matzah on Leila Seder? So there's a Torah mitzvah to eat from matzah shmura. Now, matzah shmura is not just matzah, it's not just not bread, but it's matzah shmura. What's the difference between matzah, regular matzah, and matzah shmura? So you can buy in the stores, right? People just buy in the stores matzah, which is fine. You buy a regular matzah, which is dough baked and not risen. And then you have matzah shmura, special matzah baked in fulfillment of the Seder night. And that is the hand matzah are generally or always hand matzah shmura, but the machine matzah, you have a regular machine matzah, and you have matzah shmura machine matzahs. For Leila Seder, make sure you get shmura matzah or matzah shmura. You can't be yotzi, you can't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah on Leila Seder if you have a regular matzah. It could be totally kosher. There's no chametz, no bit of chametz. They make sure that it was baked properly. But what is matzah shmur? This matzah shmur, this is during the baking of the matzah, they have not just intention, but they make sure during the baking process that this is in fulfillment of, for the sake of using of the mitzvah, by way of guarding it against becoming chametz. Shmur means to guard, and therefore guarding this bread, this poor man's bread, from becoming chametz for the sake of eating on Leila Seder, that creates matzah shmura. So, and because of that, Rabbi Leader will speak about it soon. That's the whole question, whether in machine matzah, where you don't have somebody actually having in mind as they're rolling the dough, as they're baking it, having in mind just the machine, just press the button, the whole thing goes automatic. Is that good enough for the sake of having matzah shmura? Who is guarding? The machine is guarding. The machine is doing a job. Who's guarding? Is that enough? Practically, we say yes, it is enough. All the Jews in the world, they use machine matzahs as well as hand matzah. So whatever you have, whatever you're available, just make sure if you're somewhere out there, make sure you have shmura matzah for the Seder. That's important because otherwise you're not yotzi. How much of that shmura matzah shmura must you eat? You must at least eat a kazayis, right? Anytime there's a mitzvah to eat, you have to eat a kazayis. Now, how much is a kazayis? Kazayis is not much. You want to know what's a kazayis? The size of an olive. So you want to know the size of an olive, this much. Now, could be that our olives have become smaller. So okay, fine, it's bigger. It's like a matchbox, right? However, since we're not 100% sure whether this is enough, or nowadays the sizes of our kazayis is enough, for the sake of this Torah mitzvah of eating matzah, we double the size. We eat a double kazayis. We want to make sure that we have the right share, because we eat a little bit of matzah, you just taste a little of matzah. It's nice, but you haven't filled the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach. So therefore, at this point of the Seder, a number where we're talking about after having said two brachas, Hamotzi lechem and aretz and Asher kiddushanu mitzvah v'tzvan al achilas matzah. That's point number 7 and 8 on the left side. We eat a double kazayis of matzah shmura, right? Eat at least a kazayis. Now, at this time, a double amount. How much is that? Well, there are many opinions in terms of how to count it. Some say smaller, some say bigger. You're asking, how much is it? So one kazayis would be a quarter of a hand matzah or 1/3 of a machine matzah. And if you have to double it, so therefore at this point you would eat a half a hand matzah and 2/3 of a machine matzah. Now, this is an approximate because it's a volume amount and it's a weight amount according to Sfardim. Certain hand matzahs are larger, certain hand matzahs are smaller, certain machine matzahs are thicker, some are thinner. This is just an approximation. But make sure to eat a kazayis or at least a double kazayis at this point. And this has to be done, within a few minutes, meaning if you just linger, just a half an hour just to eat a piece of matzah, you haven't eaten it, you're nibbling. So you have to eat matzah, not nibble matzah. And therefore make sure you eat it fast. How fast? Between 2 and 9 minutes, right? 3 to 4 minutes is best. not a big deal, not difficult. You're hungry anyway. But make sure you don't linger, right? Make sure you eat, you swallow, and you eat it. And again, leaning. Don't forget to lean at this point. Don't forget to leaning. After the matzah, after having fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah, the special matzah. And again, there's a lot to say about it, but in terms of halacha, this is what we have. We have number 9, maror. Rabbinic mitzvah to eating maror. Why are we eating maror? To taste, have a bitter herb. Now, not without going into what type of bitter herb, but again, this is a mitzvah to eat a kazayas. So if you're using a horseradish, the root, right, it's very sharp. To eat a kazayas of that, and we're talking about a kazayas, eating. But eating, not just popping it in and swallowing it as fast as you can. We're talking about chewing, tasting it. Dealing with the kazayas, it's very hard with horseradish. Therefore, lettuce, Roman lettuce, is much easier to consume in this way, and that may even be a better way of fulfilling the mitzvah of maror. Now, it's not that bitter, Roman lettuce. It's not that bitter. At least the root is bitter. It is considered a bitter herb, and that is fine. And therefore, what we do is use now, if you want to have a little bit of sharp or bitter taste, you can stick in a piece of horseradish if that's what you like. But don't fulfill the mitzvah of maror just with the horseradish, because you have to eat so much of it, your eyes are going to be popping out if you're doing it right. So therefore, use the Roman lettuce for the maror. It's a mitzvah to eat. Again, a kazayas within a few minutes. We don't lean, we dip it in charosis. Then after we have 8, 9. After number 9, you have number 10 is korech. We take another piece of kazayas and matzah with another piece of maror, same size, kazayas, and we eat it together, which means you had 2 kazayas of matzah, 1 kazayas of maror, and now again, 1 kazayas of matzah and 1 kazayas of maror. You eat at this point, you put them together like a Big Mac, right? God willing, this year we'll have a piece of burger inside, Korban Pesach, but until that time, right, we just have the bread, the matzah, and the lettuce, and that's it, without any meat in between. Mitzvah, we have all 3, and that's one of the reasons why maror nowadays, even though the Torah says you should eat the Korban Pesach al matzah, the marorim, you have to eat it together. You have to make a big Mac, three parts. Since we only have 2 parts, the maror became not Torahitic, rabbinic, for the reason why we still have matzah as a Torah mitzvah, because it says separately that you have to eat matzah on this night. So therefore, at this point, in order to fulfill the opinion that you have to eat the matzah and maror together, right? We do that at this point. This is at number 10. After number 10 comes 11, Shulchan Orech. Shulchan Orech is setting the table, or is referring to the meal, the Yontif meal, which is a regular Yontif meal like Friday night. Like Yontif meal, you have a regular meal. Now, how much do you eat a regular meal? A lot. Gefilte fish, soup, chicken, salad, right? Dessert, the whole thing. You have to be aware on Leila Seder, even though it should be a special Yontif meal, but be aware, don't overeat. Why? Because at the end of the meal, for dessert, and that is number 12, tafun, you must eat another double kazayas of matzah. Double kazayas of matzah. And if you stuff yourself, you had, okay, fine, I had my matzah, I had my maror, and I had my korech. And now afterwards, I'm going to be having my whole meal with soup and a fish and soup and potatoes and salad. Do you want another piece of matzah? No, thank you. No good, right? For the Seder, you should actually eat less. The main meal should actually be less than other times. Leave that for the second night. Leave that for Cholamoid. Leave that for the last night. On Leila Seder, take care that the main meal, that the Suz Yontif, don't overeat. Why? Because you have to eat afikoman. The afikoman is really in place of the Korban Pesach, which was eaten at the end of a meal, ala sova. Ala sova, finish ala sova when you are basically satisfied, and therefore this matzah is eaten in place of that. So, but here again, you have to eat a double kazais. Afikom is double kazais. Afterwards, you have number 30. You have benching, Torah mitzvah. It's a regular benching. Remember to say Yale v'yavo. After benching, you drink the third cup. Third cup after benching. Make sure you fill it up before benching and drink it afterwards. Everybody has a cup in front of them, and everybody will drink it, right? Like the other. And after starts Hallel. Even though Hallel, there are 2 paragraphs of Hallel mentioned at the end of Magid, the main part of Hallel is done after the meal. And again, the 4th cup is drunk afterwards. Make sure to fill it up. How is Hallel said? Like in Shul, you have one person saying it, the other person responding. Everybody should say it. Everybody should partake of this Hallel, and it should be a beautiful singing thing. The end of the Seder, which is number 15, is Nirtza. What is Nirtza? Nirtza is songs and praise. How long is Nirtza? one song, two songs, three songs. Every family has different. The Haggadah has a few. The point is, we just now feel fulfilled. We feel that we're connected. Rav Lev has this beautiful, beautiful mashal that in the olden days, when you go to a university, you bring your own laptop. You want to be connected to the main server. So you bring your laptop. You have to plug your laptop into the main server, right? Not Wi-Fi. What is this Wi-Fi? But you have a multi plug. So you plug in one. Here, what we have done now is we have plugged in 15 points or 14 points at the Seder. Nirtza is the realization, I'm now fully plugged in. Nirtza, now let all the spirituality flow. I'm totally connected. Just the realization of that. One last halacha, and we'll finish up, and that is, unlike what people think or know, after they say, what do? You go to bed, right? Some people say shir shir, but here's actually a halach in Shulchan Aruch. You're not allowed to go to sleep until you fall asleep. Mean there's halacha. Shavuos night we stay up, only a custom. Staying up on Leila Seder is a halacha. However, there's a limit to the halacha until you fall asleep, which means if you're totally awake, you have the mitzvah to continue speaking about the going out of Egypt and everything. And you can, take a book and speak about the miracles and the slavery and the leaving and everything as much as long as you can. So therefore, the halacha is you continue speaking about the Seder topics and go to bed only after you feel you're falling asleep. Once you're falling asleep, right, you're allowed to go to sleep. So again, we have here a very short outline. We only had a very short time, half an hour for an outline of the Seder. You have here a sheet of the midst of the Seder, and in the other sheet you have here an outline of the 4 times story, question, story, and praise. And on the other outline, the entire Seder is again laid out, and it has additional structures and outlines in it. Wish you all a special Seder, special Pesach, and it's going to be amazing. God willing. Be free. Become free.